What is yoga? Yoga is an invitation. So I mentioned this at the end of the previous video. Yoga is an invitation. If we are given a command, a directive, we're told we have to do something as human beings. I don't know about you, but sometimes if I'm told I have to do something, it can actually reduce the likelihood of me actually doing it. I don't like being told what to do, generally speaking. Of course, there are some situations where it's very welcome to be told what to do. But generally speaking, I think it's safe to say that human beings, we prefer not to be forced to do things, and we prefer not to be told that we have to do things. Yoga is the practical school of Indian philosophy, and being practical, it works with the reality of human nature. This is a very beautiful thing in yoga. It works with the reality of who and what we really are. All the techniques and teachings of yoga were developed over millennia of constant, steady observation of nature. So the teachings that were set down 2,000 years ago, they were not novel teachings. These were things that had been tried and tested over many thousands of years previous to that, to the point that they could then be distilled in this absolutely incredible, jaw-droppingly beautiful and inclusive presentation that we find in these masterful miracle mirror texts like the Yoga Sutra and the Bhagavad Gita. Miracle mirror texts in the sense that every time we look into them, they can reveal more to us. They can show us new, fresh, relevant things. And one thing that's very striking when we start to explore these classical yoga teachings is the way that they're presented. Yoga doesn't really deal in don'ts, nor does it tell us we have to do it this way or that way. Yoga teachings are very inclusive, and they're very invitational. In the Bhagavad Gita, I mentioned already in the previous video, it's a dialogue, it's a conversation, and yoga practice is all about inquiry. We have to keep asking questions. We have to keep exploring, studying, investigating. Yoga does not give us the answer. Very important to recognize this. As human beings, often we really like the idea of there being an answer, a fix-all solution. But this is not realistic, because life, what can we guarantee in life? Death and change. Life is always changing. Yoga is practical, realistic. It recognizes reality is this constant whirling change. And so it doesn't give us absolutes. What it gives us instead is an amazingly robust, tried and tested structure or frame that can guide and inform our ongoing inquiry, our ongoing investigation, our ongoing practice, our ongoing research and study. All of these words are really different ways of describing the same thing. It's this constant engagement. It's this constant effort to be present and pay attention and learn from the predictably unpredictable wonder of life. And in the yoga texts, the way the teachings are presented is very invitational. So in the dialogue of the Bhagavad Gita, for example, Krishna, the teacher, often when he's speaking to Arjuna, he's kind of inviting him into his own recognition. And this is a very important thing in yoga practice and yoga teaching. The techniques are set up to invite us to come to an experience of yoga, to come to our own understandings. They are designed and intended to empower us. Sometimes, people hear this idea that, oh, in order to practice yoga you need a guru. A real guru doesn't want to see you again. A real guru wants to empower you so you have no more need for that guru, so he or she can then deal with somebody else who may come to them for some help or guidance. The yoga teaching is designed to empower you. That's not to discredit the value of a guru, but more foundational, more essential in the yoga teachings. The guru is all around. Nature is always teaching us. But the idea is we have to become the sovereign of our own experience. And so the yoga teachings give us this very robust structure, frame, support system to help our ongoing inquiry. And the structure, the system, the frame invites us to bring more of ourselves into the present moment. So every yoga technique is an invitation to all parts of myself to come into the present moment. When I do yoga asana, it's not just a physical practice. When I do a singing practice, it's not just a musical or an emotional practice. When I study the yoga text, it's not just an intellectual practice. If it's yoga, it invites all parts of the system into the present moment. So if I'm doing my yoga asana practice, for example, I'm not just doing it with my limbs in space, I'm also using my sense powers, I'm using my mental focus and acuity, and I'm also cultivating an emotional quality, the type of quality that I want to have to support me in the day-to-day. I practice what I want to experience. Yoga is practical. I'll probably say it 1,000 times in these videos. Yoga is practical, so it recognizes what we practice, we become better at. We get good at what we practice. Everything is training. Everything is training. And so, when we take recourse to yoga techniques, it's especially important that we practice feeling how we want to feel. So we invite ourselves into that state of balance, of rich presence, of wholeness that we would like to feel in our day-to-day. So, how do you want to feel in your life? I'd like to feel grounded. I'd like to feel safe. I'd like to feel calm. I'd like to feel peaceful. I'd like to feel energy and inspiration, whatever it might be. Ask yourself this question, and we cultivate that when we practice. The idea is we use, for example, our basic techniques to create this stable ground, relatively speaking, to create this equipoise, this integration, this balance, which is in the platform to be able to act in the world, in our day-to-day, through all the different challenges and vicissitudes of life, more easily in the way that we would like to. And the idea is, if we try to force ourselves to be like that, it's likely not to work so well. And so we have to invite ourselves. Say, for example, there's a party going on, and you are told, oh, you have to go to that party. And maybe you've had that experience. Oh, I have to go. Oh, I have to go to work, or oh, I have to go to see this person. What about inviting yourself? You know, we're invited to go to this party. I'm invited to join this program. It lands with the psyche very, very differently. And so the idea is, in yoga practice, we are inviting ourselves to change. We are inviting ourselves to become more attuned to this type of state of awareness that is actually a reflection of our deeper longing. Now, let's say, for example, you're in a bit of a funk. You're feeling frustrated, or you're feeling a bit exhausted or weary, or you're feeling a bit whatever. You're a bit off. And you know you'd like to feel different, and so you say, feel different. You know, like, be happy, be positive, but you're feeling really annoyed. Or be calm, and you're feeling really, you know, that type of tyrannical injunction might not work so well. And so the idea in practice is that we practice embodying an irresistible invitation. We practice giving the whole system the experience of just settling into togetherness and oneness. And so if we find ourselves in such a situation where we're not in that state that we'd like to be in, we've kind of fashioned some grooves that can orient us back in that direction more easily. Now, yoga is the invitation. I mentioned the idea of a party. If we want to have, in the words of the Bob Marley song, a soul shakedown party tonight, or now, or today, or whenever it may be, I feel if we're going to have a soul shakedown party, the only way that can happen is if we invite all the members of the group, yeah? If we're going to have a party so rich that it gets the whole of our being vibing, that it gets the whole of ourselves involved in the present moment, then we have to invite all the parts. And so this is the idea of yoga as the invitation. We cannot leave anything out. Yoga, we've mentioned, means to join or to connect. Sometimes people also talk about it as to unify, and yoga is about unification. Now, the only real, genuine unity is one that includes. So there's no exclusivity in yoga. Yoga invites all parts of ourselves into the present moment. So think about it, it's like, maybe you remember those fairy tales where all the fairies get invited except the one, and then she places the curse that when the person who the party was for gets to a certain age, she's going to prick her finger and da-da-da-da. And then the heroine of the fairy tale goes on an adventure to become an integrated adult human being. Same idea. If we want to become integrated, we want to become whole, then those parts of ourselves that are being left out, we have to integrate them. Now let's say there's part of yourself that you don't know very well, you're scared of, maybe you're ashamed of, you're shy about, you might feel uncomfortable about, because this is a thing, once we get to a certain age, when we're an adult, one of the difficulties in life is that we get accustomed to competence. The things we do day to day, we practice them plenty, so we get good at them. The things we do in our job, the things we do in our home life, so many things we can do them, relatively speaking, effortlessly or with minimal effort. But then there are some things, they're difficult for us because we haven't practiced them. Now yoga says, let's invite them to the party as well. Because once we include all parts of ourselves, then we give ourselves the chance to feel more how we'd really like to feel whole. Because if we feel whole, we'll feel content. We can even perhaps feel a sense of desirelessness, because if we feel whole, full, complete, there's no space to need or want anything more. Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra, when he talks about yoga practice, he says, when you practice with that constant, steady, unbroken, wholehearted, dedicated, committed effort to foster steadiness, one of the fruits or consequences of that is that the practitioner who practices in that diligent way will no longer thirst for things that he or she has previously experienced or has just heard about. So sometimes in life we're always chasing after I'll be okay when I have this, when I have that. Oh, I just wish I could have that. Oh, we don't feel quite whole here and now. And yoga says, no. Practice wholeness here and now. And as we practice giving ourselves wholly to this moment can become its own reward, its own completion, its own fullness. And when we invite all parts of ourselves into the present moment, they're more likely to come along for the journey. They're more likely to join the party. If we force them or demand that they come, they might not feel so comfortable about that. So yoga is an invitation. We just invite ourselves into a space or a mode of greater inclusivity, of greater cohesion,